Welcome to the Design System Masterclass, and this is the fourth chapter of Figma Masterclass. In the first three chapters, we learned about the fundamentals of Figma, then we learned about how to create in Figma, then we learned about how to create efficiently in Figma using auto layout. So we did an auto layout masterclass, and within all these chapters, we didn't just learn the theories, but we also practiced with practice files, which I had shared with you. And then in this masterclass, we are going to follow the exact same formula, which is we're going to learn theories, and as we learn a piece of theory, we will practice it. So what we are going to cover is fundamental questions, then we'll do a tour of a component library, which is pretty much the core of a design system. Then we'll learn how to set up the foundations of a design system. Then you'll get a task, and I'll also provide you with the Figma files to do that. Then we'll learn how to build a button. It might seem like a very small thing, but you'll realize that it's actually a complex stuff. And then finally, we are going to cover dissecting other components so that you can build a full-fledged design system. So stay with me because we are going to now get started with this masterclass. But the goal of this video is that by the end of this video, you should have no excuses left to nail a design system. A lot of people say, I don't have this, I don't have that. No, you will not have any excuses left after this. So you will be able to build a design system from scratch, because what I'm going to give you is industry level knowledge. In fact, the design system that I'm going to share with you is something that I built at Zeta. I'm going to show a version of it. Then I'm also going to cover all the theories that is required to crack your first design job as a design system designer or a manager. I'll give you a DS tour. DS is your design system in shortcut. So I'll give a tour of that. Then I'll show you what are the different parts, your foundations and your components, your templates, all of that. I'll show you now how do you build a design system from scratch and how do you improve beyond this video. So this video might be 1 hour long or 2 hour long. I don't know how long this is going to be. But beyond this, how do you learn, right? How do you keep learning basically? I'm going to talk about that as well. All right. So without wasting any time, let's get started with the fundamental questions. The first question is, what exactly is a design system? To be honest, for a very beginner, the core of a design system is actually a component library. And then there are some supporting elements around that component library that makes it evolve over time. For example, some of the supported elements are how do you communicate what changes you are doing in a component library? Then how do you manage project? For example, how do you basically take feedback from people and how do you make sure that the right feedbacks are getting implemented and so on. In fact, if you ask me what should I learn first in a design system, then I'll also tell you the exact same thing, which is first learn the component library and then learn a bit about, the theory around governance, which I'll actually cover in this video, and then learn how to think when building scalable components. Like that, thinking for scalability is something that you need to hone over time. And all of this I'm going to actually cover in this video. So stay tuned. Next question is why companies invest in a design system. You might have already known for the fact that a component library actually gives you speed so that, you don't have to draw every button. You just drag and drop button from a component library. So it also provides by default consistency, which is if a button is blue in color in one page, it can't become, suddenly black in color in another page because the component library won't allow you to do it unless it is like intentional. So it provides consistency. It provides also inbuilt accessibility. For example, if I have set the right colors for my foregrounds and for my backgrounds, and I'm setting the right standards of font sizes, then I'll never run into those contrast ratio issues, which means your accessibility will be built into every component that will be used by your designer. So they don't have to worry about, accessibility at that point. So your design system people will be able to handle it at component level. So that's one area. Then the other area is it sets a quality level. See, what happens is not everybody in your team would be good at visual design. So what does a design system do? It brings everybody to a plane level. So the standard of your design system pretty much is the base standard of your visual design. On top of that, what you do is up to you as a designer, as a visual designer, as a UI designer. But what a design system does is it pretty much brings everybody from different skill set, different skill levels in visual design to one level. So that's why companies invest so much in design system. Then isn't a component library enough? Well, the short answer is there will always be new requirements, there will always be new Figma updates, and there will always be issues that needs to be fixed. That's why you need a dedicated team to keep growing that design system, to make it efficient with time, and also make sure that the design system is polished and is well communicated across all your different functions. Then I have covered this question. Then what are the problems of a design system? So one of the main problem that a lot of people say is it is constraining in nature. Especially if you're from a graphic design background or from a filmmaking background, you would find design system to be a slightly constraining element, because pretty much everything that you can build with your UI, 90% of it is going to come from design system. So hence somebody who has experienced slightly more creative freedom would find it constraining. However, you don't always have to use design system. You can actually break the components if needed, but again, you have to justify why you are breaking it. But then that is also fair in most of the cases, that you can actually break it. And also you can use local component. For example, let's say, for your particular use case, a component is actually useful and that does not exist in design system. Instead of waiting for your design system team to build the component, test it, ship it, make the developers build it, and then put it into production and then communicate it across the team. Instead of doing all that cycle of release, what you can do is you can just build your local component, tell to your local developers or the developers dedicated to your team to build it out and then start using it. So it won't be always that constraining, or it won't slow you down, and it won't restrict your creativity as well. And also in general, it needs a dedicated team, so it is a lot of resource. So that's one of the problem. And one of the problem that nobody pretty much talks about is a uncertain career ladder, because I feel a lot of people get into specializing in design system, which is great by the way. However, the problem is I still wonder, where do you evolve into after being a design system manager? Let's say 2-3 people are working under you to maintain a design system. After that, where do you go? I think a lot of big companies would have solved for it. I don't know the answer to it, but I feel at least in India, in most of the companies, a specialist design system designer, I don't know where the career takes. So that's one problem that not a lot of people talk about, but yeah. Anyway, so that's for the first part. The second part is, let's take a tour of a component library. So this is a component library that I had built at Zeta. I don't know if you have used it or not used it. The way I had built it is documented both for designer and for even design system manager who is going to take over from me. So it is good for you that, it is small, compact, has certain use cases which is advanced. Most likely you won't be able to actually replicate the exact same design system in a free Figma plan, and I'll talk about the constraints. But what it will give you is a very in-depth idea of some of the industry standards that is followed. So it's not a very simple design system. It's a small design system, but not a simple one. What you are going to have in a design system in general is foundations, and these are your components. Foundations are your colors, and then your spacing numbers, radius numbers, shadow styles, then your typography, and then your icons, maybe illustrations, if any, photographs, if any, OS UIs, like here it is dedicated to iOS, so you see your iOS keyboard, number pad, and status bar. So this is what you find in your foundations. So foundations are nothing but the elements of a design system that gets reused in different components. So when I say components, your components are like your buttons, like your input fields, drop downs, then you have your switches, then you have navigational element like your top part of the header, then you have your segmented control, and then you have different cards here, then your lists, then bottom sheets, and so on. So this is actually a smaller version, but yeah, it has pretty much all the important components that you would like to have in a design system V1. Next part is setting up the foundations. So let's get started with colors, which is the most important part of it and also pretty much the most complex one. But let's go through them one by one, okay? Let's understand what is color categories, okay? So your colors come in different categories. First one is your semantic colors, which are your red, orange, and green. You can also call them amber if you want. So again, the reason is red strongly means negative, orange strongly means warning, and green strongly means positive. So they carry a meaning, and that's why they are called semantic colors. Then you have your grays. So any color between your white and black and all the shades between them is actually your grays, which are very heavily used in UI design. And then you have your complementary colors, which are typically used in your infographics and illustrations to pop out from your semantic colors or your brand colors. So these are the colors that expand your color palette. For example, here I have my yellow, mint, cyan, indigo, purple, brown, and so on. Again, these are primarily used in infographics and illustrations. Then I have created another category of colors which have opacity within them. You can see that these are actually solid gray colors. They don't have opacity, but here these colors have opacity, mainly because if I am actually building out a bottom sheet, then in the background of a bottom sheet, I want to have these colors. Or even if I want to create hover effect on certain things, I might use this transparent black. So this is something that I have created as a separate category. And also you get your brand color, which is your primary color. So these are the different categories of color. Next is picking the perfect shade. So for example, you know that red denotes negative. So let's say you know that you want to have a red color, but when you're selecting colors, there are so many shades of red. So how do you decide which exact shade to choose from? And the answer to that is actually not very simple. Okay, if you follow a little bit of human interface guidelines from Apple, if you go to this website, I'll give the link in the description, and go to foundations and color, then you will learn a bit about color. I don't want you to actually go through so much of them because it can get very technical, and at this point when you are just learning out design system, you don't need to go into such depth because it will just repel you from learning design system because the depth is very high and you may not understand all of the things. So what I would suggest rather is just go to any popular design system. So I'm using Apple, you can use Google, or you can use Microsoft, or you can use Uber, or any such popular design systems. And then you can basically just pick the colors from their design system, especially your red, amber, and green. You can pretty much pick these colors and just copy them into your design system rather than using too much brain and trying to learn all the science behind how to select the right color and learn about color science, color gamuts, screens, and so on. Without getting into too much complexity, you can basically pick it from your Apple color palette or your Google color palette or whatever you want to pick from. I would say that would be actually a wiser call at this point of your career. Once you get into full-time design system, then you can, get into the complexity and nitty-gritty of how to choose the exact right color for your brand. But for now, let's go ahead with picking it from Apple because they have obviously researched enough. Now next is tokens. You might have heard about this term called tokens, and everyone pretty much adds a lot of complexity to it. Simply put, let's say as a designer, I'm using your design system and I want to give a particular color to this text. Okay. Now tell me which naming system makes sense. These are the same color. I want to choose between the same two color. Which naming system makes sense or makes it easier for me to select the colors, right? Is it this, which is gray 40, gray 60, or is it this, which is text primary, text secondary? It is text primary, text secondary because this gives me additional context of where this particular color needs to be used. So as a designer, while I'm trying to use them, I know that, okay, I need to use text secondary here because this is my text and this is the secondary element of this section. So I can use text secondary. Or when you actually define your colors in your design system, the base values or your source files or source colors can be named like this for easy identification. But when it is being used in particular context, they need to be named like this. And this naming is basically your tokens. It's just a way of naming your variables. Okay, so that is it. That's all about tokens. Then with token, one advantage that comes up is something known as modes, which I have mentioned here that we will cover. But the only problem with understanding modes right now is the fact that in free Figma, you won't be able to use different modes. For example, your light mode and your dark mode are your two different types of modes. Your normal mode and your accessibility mode are your two different types of modes. So again, we won't be able to actually build it in this video because I'm not using a pro plan. and I know most of the people who are watching my video don't use a pro plan. So I'm not going to build it, but however, I'm going to show you how it looks like to have different modes. Okay. So that's all about your tokens, honestly. Tokens is basically, if you look here, these are all the colors that are defined, which means beyond all these colors, I'm not going to use a single different color for my UI. Okay. But then the same color, what I'm doing here is I'm renaming it so that the designer finds it easy to use. You can see here content, shape, and primary colors are these 4 colors. Okay. Why are there 4 colors? Because there are 4 modes. This is my normal light mode. This is my contrast, high contrast or high accessible mode, which is light mode. Okay. But this one is for dark mode, normal, and this one is for dark mode, accessibility. So you can see the different names that are being used here. Okay. Now the same goes here. This is content secondary, this is content tertiary, content error, content warning, content access. And similarly, you will find background colors, border colors, overlay colors, and content text colors. Okay. So what happens at the end is basically, as a designer, how I want my designer to basically use my colors is, if they are creating a box here and they want to choose a color, then I provide them a small list of colors that is eligible for that shape. So hence you see your content shape colors here. So this is my primary, this is secondary, this is tertiary, this is for error state, this is warning, this is success, and so on. So that the designer who is using my design system does not get confused. Okay. Now, if I write some text here, okay, look at all the colors that come up. Okay. What you see here is I can choose between having brand colors. Again, this one is in dark shade, this was is in light shade. And followed by that, you can see that this is content primary, content secondary, content tertiary, and so on. Again, there is no mode selection here. Otherwise, had it been in different modes, then you would have seen different shades of colors here. But not to get too much confused, all I am saying is, when I chose text, you see content text colors here. When I chose shape, you see content shape colors here. Similarly, let me add a border. Okay, when I choose a border, I see different border colors here. Okay, so the designer does not get confused by seeing 200 colors like this. Rather, whatever they are creating, they only see that particular eligible colors. So we'll see how to build that out. But one of the value add of having tokens is this, which is you get to see the exact colors and then you can easily make a decision between what color you want to choose depending on the context of use. Okay. So that's all about your tokens. This is essentially all the colors that I use in my design system. And these are the same colors, but now named and grouped into different categories. By the way, if you're wondering why I named them shape, background, and border, how did I come up with this structure? Well, a typical UI can be categorized like this, which is, this is the background color. On top of that, this is my button. The button uses a text color here. So all these are text colors. This is a shape color, and even this is a shape color. So this structure is something that I have picked up from Uber. There is a bit of issue while you are switching from dark mode to light mode. So one of the things that you will understand in different modes is, if this is my button in light mode, and let's say this is my button in dark mode, okay, and this is my background color, let's say in white mode or light mode, and this is my background color in dark mode. Okay, so the logic you will give to this white color is, hey, white change to black when there is dark mode. Okay, but then you cannot really say that to white in general. Okay, you have to tell it to background white, not to white in general, because if I tell that all whites in light mode will change to dark mode, then this will also become black, which I don't want. Okay. So that's why you differentiate that this is my shape color or background color, and the logic you define when it goes from white mode to dark mode is this white, which is background white, changes from white to black. Okay. Whereas this white, which is text white, changes from white to white. Okay, which means it remains white when it goes from light mode to dark mode. This is another advantage of having different tokens. Okay, because you can define different logic when they switch between modes. Okay. Let's delete this. Let's now see what next we have to look at. Next is how to use variables. So this is all theory so far. Now, how do you actually inbuild your colors into your design system? Well, if you have never built a color out, let's say this is the red. Obviously, you'll need to copy it from your particular design system, but let's assume that this is the red I want. So what I do is I click here, and I go to this plus button that creates new style or variable. Okay. If I click here, so I can create a variable here. Okay. Or I can click outside on the canvas and click on variables. Okay. And then I can add colors here. So by default, you won't see these variables here. Okay, let me delete all these variables. So by default, you won't see these variables. I actually created them in order to practice before teaching. So you can go here, click on color variable. So it will create a color variable, call it red1. And then whatever hex code is there here, selected this, whatever hex code is there here, add it here, and that's it. Okay. And let's add one more red color. Okay, sorry, this adds a mode. You click here to create a variable. Okay, red 2, let's say I want a slightly darker red. I can do this, pick from here. Okay, so I'll copy this, I'll add it here. Okay, so now red 2 is created. Similarly, I can create all my reds, all my greens, all my ambers or oranges. I can create all my grays and so on. And then what I do is, if you look into this design system which is already built, okay, what you will see here is I have system color sources, which is all the different colors that I want. I told you I want all the different red 1, red 2, red 3, red 4, and so on. So I've just renamed it slightly better. Rather than calling it red 1, red 2, red 3, red 4, I've just called it red default light, red default dark, red accessible light, and red accessible dark. Okay, basically picked it up from Apple. Okay, you can see here default, accessible, light, dark. Okay, I've used the same framework here. Okay, and here you can see the value is actually in hex code. Okay, this is because it is the source. And when I use tokens, which is system colors, these are all tokens, because now you see I have actually referenced a color that exists. Okay, I have not used hex code here. Rather, I have said that use gray 0 here, use gray 1 here, use gray 2 here, and so on. Okay, so that's something that you can also do, which is use tokens like this and define your colors in your color palette like this. Now the next question is, how do I make sure that when I create a rectangle, only the content, shape, and background colors are visible? Okay, and when I draw a border, okay, only the border colors are visible to the designer. Okay, you see here, you don't see content color, text color, background color, overlay color here, because you have selected a border. So you are only seeing the border color. How do you do that? Well, you see here content shape. So if I go here and click and go to scope, okay, there I have said that only show if it is a frame or a shape. Okay, similarly, if I go to content text, then you see here I've made sure that the scope is it only shows for text. Okay, and it does not come up in other areas. Okay, so same goes for red. Okay, I have said that this particular shade of red will only come up, or this variable or this token will only come up when text is selected. Okay, as a choice, come up as a choice. So that's how you can do, which is you define all the colors first, and then you create another set where you create your tokens and make sure your tokens are named well. Okay, so that's all about scoping. Then I talked about modes already, which is all about your dark mode and your light mode. Okay, here also, if you see practically where you actually create different modes, is this default dark mode. These are the, sorry, default light mode. These are the colors. Default dark mode. These are the colors. You can see it is grayed out because I'm on a free plan of Figma. Okay, here also accessible light mode. You can see these are the different colors, and you can see how it is different. Okay, this red is what, a bright red. Now this red is also fine, but in contrast mode it is slightly darker, and then here in accessible or contrast dark mode it is slightly lighter. Because why is it lighter when it is accessible mode in dark mode? Because dark mode, your background is going to be dark, so the lighter your colors are, the more contrast it will create. So that's all about your different modes and how you can have it. Obviously you cannot practice it now if you don't have a pro plan, but that is okay. I mean, it's not super important to learn it right away. Okay, now next is typography. Okay, in typography also there are different categories of fonts. So in general you have your super large fonts, and then you have your titles, and then you have your headline, body, subhead. These are your basically regular category, and then you have your small font. So in general it is just extra big, title, body, and smalls. Okay, these are your 4 categories. So now the question is, how do I create this typographic scale? Typographic scale is nothing but a group of font sizes basically. So how do I make sure that these are all the different sizes and these are the right sizes? So there is a lot of science, again, like your color, there is a lot of science, but what you can actually do is again use this Apple guidelines and pretty much replicate how much ever you want to replicate from Apple. I have basically stolen it from Apple. You can steal it from Uber or any such app which is super popular, and have a good design system team who have done their own research and have come up with your typography style. Or there is more science to studying typography scale, but then that's a bit of complex stuff and I don't want you to get into it right away. Okay, it's just better to copy it and use it for the time being. Okay, now the next thing is styles. Okay, how do you actually create these typography styles? So how do you create? If I start typing here, okay, let me create another style. Let's say this is 72 in size and this is extra bold. Okay, I can go here and I can create styles here. Okay, create styles. I can call it gigantic and then click here. This will create the style gigantic. Okay, let's write it as gigantic. Give it a content color. Just for documentation purpose, I can actually place it here. Okay. Now next time when the designer starts typing, okay, you can see that these are your different font styles that is available from your design system, and gigantic is one of them. Now if you're wondering why is gigantic coming at the bottom, how can I actually push it to the top? Well, you just click outside here, it shows all the different styles that is available in this file. Click on gigantic and just drag and drop at the top. Okay, so that's how you can work with your fonts now. Okay, I'll just delete it from here and I'll also delete it from my system for now. Okay, next is shadow styles. Okay, shadow styles also similarly, let's say I have this here, I add effect, and let's say for some reason I like this shadow style. Okay, how can I save it? So same thing, I click here, I go here, I click on create style and I name it and it will appear. Okay, so you can see I have created some shadow styles here. Okay, Then next is corners and spacing. Okay, so if I create this rectangle and then I try to give a corner radius, you can see that this is constraining. You have 2, 4, 8, 12, 16, 400 as your different corner radius. It's not like you can give any value, because that's not what design system allows. And this constraint is something that you want in general. So how that happens now? How do you create that? Again, just go to variable. Okay. Next, if you actually go and create another space called radius. Here, if I click on variable, I can create a number here. So now if I click and create a number and say 20, I can have it here. And obviously I can move it to the top as well. So this needs to be pasted here, and that's it. I can create a number like this and call it radius too large, for example, or extra large maybe. Okay, and I can create a radius variable like that. So next time when I'm actually creating or selecting a corner radius, I click here and you see extra large appears now. Okay, the same thing you can do for spacing as well. Okay, and what is next? Icons. Okay, if you look here, there are different icons. I have told you in my previous videos, like 2 videos back, that all your icon needs to be inside a bounding box and they need to scale within them. For example, let's say this is my icon. Okay, it needs to be inside a bounding box. So let's say this is my 24 cross 24. Okay, and this is my icon and I want to create a component out of it. Okay, put it here. Let's say give it a content shape color, remove the color from here. Okay, and then what you see here is it is constrained. Okay, you want to remove this constraint and make it scale. Why? Because if somebody takes this component, okay, and then they try to increase the size, see what happens. You don't want that. You want it to scale, but it is not scaling. So what you do is you go here, you click on scale, you go here, you click on scale. Okay, and then you go here, click here, create component. Okay, then whatever you want to name it, you can name it. Okay, let's say it is called diamond. And then more important thing to do is basically put them inside this frame which is called as icon. Otherwise it won't appear under icons. Okay, so now if somebody picks this diamond and then they try to increase the size, okay, they will see the icon getting increased in size as well. Okay, so that's all about adding icons. Again, you don't have to draw icons from scratch. You can use material symbols plugin to create icons. I have talked about it in my previous videos as well, but yeah, that's it. Then there are system components. You can add them from different files that exist with Apple's Figma page or Google's Figma page, so you can use it from there. And then let's talk about accessibility. Okay, what I have done here is I have basically added all different sizes of text with all different text colors, and then I have used all different text colors, you can see, and then I have used all different background colors behind them. So you have now all your combinations and permutations of text colors, text sizes, and text and background colors. Okay, and then I have done a check of contrast ratios, and I found out that all of these contrast ratios qualify as AA certifications. Some of them also qualify as AAA, but that is not super required. AA is good enough for mobile. Okay, so you can also do that. You can search for contrast ratio plugin or accessibility plugins in Figma, and you can check your design system. And if you find that some of your colors are not giving the color contrast, then you can tweak them. For example, let's say if this red was not like this and rather it was something like this, okay, it was a bright red and the contrast ratio is not good enough, then you go ahead and change the variable. You make it slightly darker and so on. So that's how you can actually, check your accessibility and tweak your colors. Okay. So that's all about how do you set up your foundations. And the next part is going to be about how do you actually create a button. Okay. So this is going to be the next part. But before that, it's time for a task. So now it's your turn to set up the foundations. I'll give you Apple's human interface guidelines. I'll give you Uber's design system. And then I'll also give you this working file and this working file for your reference. And your job is basically to create a new file and set up your design system foundations, which means you set up your colors, you set up your spacing units, your radius units, your shadows, icons, and OS UI units. And then you also make sure that the accessibility is built into your design system and your colors. Now let's get into building a button. Okay. So when I say button, it has all these different variations. Okay. So if a designer uses one of the button that I have created here, they should be able to see all these different configurations. So they can choose between fixed style button or responsive button. Responsive button is when I type, the size of the button changes. So that they can do, or they can switch between primary or secondary style of buttons, large or medium size of buttons, and they can also change the different states of the button. Okay. And they should also be able to change whether they want to show icon or not. And if they show icon, they should be able to switch icons as well. Right. So you can simply switch icons from here. Go to foundations, icons, and you can switch icons, change the colors, and you can create a button like this as well. Okay. So this is how somebody should be able to work with your button. So this is essentially how you think about scalability, which is what are all the different properties. For example, primary, secondary, icon on and off, responsive, fixed, states are normal, hover, click, disable loading. Hover comes up if you have web. If you don't have web, then hover is not required, but it's always good to build it out. So these are the different configuration. Maybe there can be more configuration as well. For example, left icon, right icon, and then maybe there can be button groups or maybe change of button colors. So red button, blue button, primary button, secondary button, tertiary button, links, all those different configuration can be done. Okay. Now let's see how you can actually build a button from scratch. Okay. And I'll not give a end-to-end tutorial. Rather, I would give you the philosophies which will help you build any component. So first of all, think of the structure. Okay. What goes into it? What are the composition of this? You have icon, you have text, and then you have a shell around it. Okay. So let's bring an icon. Let's bring this icon, add here, write a text, says button. Okay. Let's bring them together. Let's change the color to white. Let's change this color to also a white from design system. Let's put them into auto layout and then make it 4, give it 16, make it 8, and then give a fill color, say this one. Also give a radius, say this one. Okay. So now you have a button as an auto layout. Okay. What we can do is we can make it a component first. So if I click here, this is now a component. Okay. Now next thing is if I click here and I click here, it will create a variant. Okay. Now if I want, I can make it a secondary button. Okay. So if I press on Shift and X, then my fill color will become stroke color. So if I press Shift X, so I press this and Shift X, then you can see a stroke is added here with this color. And then what I'll do is I'll add a fill color, which is say this stroke color. Let me change it to something like this. Let me change the fill color of the icon to this text color. Let's change it to this. Okay. So now we have 2 buttons. Let's create 2 more buttons and change the state of it as well. Okay. So this is, let's say, active. Let's make it inactive. Okay. So for inactive, what can we do? Let's say what we want to do for inactive button is give a opacity of 50%. Okay. This is 50%, this is 50%. So now 4 buttons are there. But if I take this button out, let me take it out. Okay. As a designer, I'm not getting the right controls here. So why am I not getting? Let's work on that. First of all, if you click here, you see that only one property is there, whereas we actually need 3 properties. What are the 3 properties? 3 properties are to select between primary and secondary, then to select between active and inactive, and then to select between whether we need an icon or not. Okay, so that's what we will do here. We will add a property here, or at least for the time being, let's just change the property here. Property name needs to change to the first one, say it is style. Okay, so style, this one is primary, this one is also primary, this one is secondary, and this one is also secondary. Now let's create another property. We click here, we click on property, and we click on variants. Okay, let's call this property active. Okay, and create property. Now I can click here and change active to yes, and this one to also active yes. This one we can change to no, this one we can change to no. Okay, now let's see how this button behaves. Okay, we have secondary here, we can change it to primary, we can change it to active or inactive. Now we also want a similar control to show icon or not show icon. For that, what we do is we click here, we go to appearance, we click here which is apply variable, which is apply appearance variable, click on plus, and then let's name this as show icon. Okay, create properties. Now this creates a boolean property. Okay, you can see that show icon comes here. Now what will happen is if I select here, you see show icon comes here. If I switch it off, then that icon goes away. Okay, but then we need to add it to all these instances as well. So if I click here, click here, click here, then this is added. Same to be done here. Show icon. Let's add this property of show icon. Okay, now when you look at this button, you get all the different configuration, which is go to secondary, you can active or deactive, then you can show icon, you don't show icon. So we have the component ready right now. Okay, so similarly you can build different components. It's all about just thinking about auto layout, thinking about scalability, which is thinking about all the different properties that exist today and the properties that might come in tomorrow. And then you think about just changing different properties and then making sure that they reflect here. Okay, so you have your boolean properties, one of the more important properties, which is coming here in appearances, right? You click here and then you can add a appearance property, okay, which is here appearance property. And you can also do instant switches as well. For example, if I click here, I go here, I can create an instance swap property. Okay, let's say I add it here and call it icons. Okay, or let's call it change icon, change icon 2. Okay, we can add it here. For this, let's add change icon to property. Let's add change icon to property. Let's add change icon to property. So what will happen is here now I can switch. Okay, so if I select this, can you see that I can hide the icon, or if I select the icon, now from here I can switch between different things, right? I can switch to lists, or I can switch to load, can switch to logout, whatever. Obviously I'll have to change the color. The reason this color is not taking from here is because the icons are actually not designed well. There is a way to design it in a way wherein I don't have to come here and change the color. Okay, it is possible to do that. But for the scope of this video, let's keep it simple for now. Okay, so now you have learned a bit about how do you create components, how do you use variables, and how do you create variants or different properties using those variables. So this is all about building a button. Now all I want you to do is task number 2, and I'll give you all the foundation files that is required for you to basically use as a reference. And if you want to relook at the video, then you can do that. You can pause the video wherever you're struggling. Okay, and I want you to build this button library out. Okay, so I'll provide you the button library, but I want you to build it from scratch. All right, so that is your next task. Next is dissecting other components. Okay, let's go and look at different components. So you have your button here. This is done. If you look at how this is structured, what you will find here is this is the text box, but it also has an icon hidden. Okay, if I switch it on, then the icon is switched on, and this text can be written like this. But the issue with making something structured like this is if I keep on typing, then this will go beyond the length. Okay, so you need to be careful around how you are structuring a button. Okay, so this is about button. Now next is input text field. So here also you can see this is auto laid out with this one, and inside it things are again auto layout. You can see different things are switchables. So again, the reason why this can happen is because they are all auto layout inside. And as a consumer of this design, as a designer, if I just bring this out and if I show you all the different variation that is there, you can see it here. You can choose between drop down or simple text entry. You can choose the different states. You can choose whether you want to have label or not, whether you want to have placeholder or not, whether you want to show left icon or not, right icon or not, helper text or not. So this is how you can actually create input field as well. Next is navigation. Navigation elements are quite simple, but if I just bring it out, then you will see that there are two properties. Okay, one is how many number of elements you want, 2, 3 or 4. And then next part is how do you want it to be distributed? Okay, left aligned or do you want it to be centered? Okay, do you want it to be centered? Now next thing is, if I show you this, then each of this element is having a property which is active or inactive. So I can inactive this, choose this and activate it. So I can basically reuse this component in different ways as well. Next is this top title component. Okay, again same, use some auto layout and see that now you have a side element where you can add a link or an icon or both or just one of them, then show subtitle or not show it, it is up to you. So this also you can do just by hiding or unhiding stuff. This is a very, very simple navigational element. Okay, now let's look at content. And in our auto layout exercise, we have pretty much built this unit out. But again, what we are doing here, if I just pull this out, what you would see here is everything is switched on. Okay, but we don't need that. Okay, so let me bring this out. Okay, so see, what is it? It is type control, but you can also make it transaction, also make it heading and so on. And if you double click, then you get more control, which is left block, do you want or do you not want? Block, do you want or do you not want? And if you want, then what should go into the left block? Is it an image or not? So do you need an image? Maybe yes, then that is fine. Then switch off the icon and this should be fine. Okay. So similarly, you get so many different, configurations. And as a designer, you should be able to control this and decide which one you want and which one you don't. Okay. So that's how you can create this list icon. And I have talked in depth about it in my auto layout tutorial, which was the previous video in this playlist. Okay. Similarly, you can also build out cards. You can see it's the same thing, which is title, then you have a body, and then you have a left icon, and then here you have image. But in general, what you're doing is image yes or no, left icon yes or no, and if it is yes, then what is that icon? So instance switch. Here button yes or no, because here we don't have button, here we have button. And here again button, which button you want? Is it going to be primary button or secondary button? So these are all the different configurations. So this is good enough for you to basically get started and build out a design system on your own. It is actually not that tough. Once you get started, it won't feel that tough. Once you get the confidence of building a button, you will get the confidence of building an input field, and slowly you will be able to build anything. Like, to be honest, I feel if you can build a input field component, you should be able to build pretty much all the component pretty easily. Okay, except for maybe this list component, because this is a very complex component. However, I have given a complete tutorial in my auto layout masterclass, which is the previous video. So please do check it out. Okay. So the next thing for you is basically build all the other components after button, and I give you all the resources that is required. So please go ahead and do that. One more bonus tip that I'll give you is one component that you can create is a toolbox. So toolbox, my idea here is all these most used components and their configurations, you can just put them into one particular, component. And you can tell your designers that when you're building screens from scratch, you can just take your toolbox with it and then detach it. So the designer will basically take the toolbox out and then go here and detach it. And then they will be able to just get all the components that is generally used. Okay. So again, they don't have to look for different components, and they don't have to switch between design system file and their own working file. They can just basically take the toolkit with them or toolbox with them and then start using all these different components. Okay, so that was just a pro tip or a pro usage of a component called as toolbox. Not everybody uses it, but I just thought it's a cool idea to share with you. So you can also build a toolbox as well. Anyway, if you have stayed with the video so far, I'm pretty sure you have learned something about design system. And if you have any doubt, please ping me or just put a comment and I'll try to resolve it. I hope that you'll work with all these practice files, and if you struggle anywhere, then let me know in the comments. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much. Bye bye.